Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne. I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Gord Follett is a Newfoundland-based landscape photographer who lives in the town of Paradise with his wife and kids. He's been combining his love of photography in Newfoundland to capture the essence of its landscapes and cultural scenes. He enjoys travelling to different areas of the province to photograph different landscapes and seaport scenes. We discuss his local area and the many landscapes he has to choose from, his ways of balancing full-time work with his creative pursuits, and a whole lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Gord. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Good. How are you, Grant?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I've been looking at your work and following you for some time and pretty impressed with what I've seen. How about you tell us a little bit about why you do what you do?
I've been doing it for probably 9 years now, but more seriously the past 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started, I picked up a camera when we knew we were going to have my son, actually, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the biggest reason why I started photography, because I wanted to learn a little bit of portrait, to take pictures of my son.
Sure.
And so I just kind of started to learn a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I went to a park in St. John's, actually. It's called
Yep.
Mooring Park. And during the winter, they'll have it all done up with Christmas lights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took my camera down, of course, and I tried a few shots, few handheld shots. This was at night, so I didn't know what I was doing.
Yep.
And quarter-second shots, so they were a little bit blurry, but they came out okay in my eyes, of course. Anyway, so I posted a few, and some people liked it. A few people asking for prints, so it just kind of went from there. So I kind of got interested into landscape photography a little bit after that, and one thing led to another. So I started, of course, down the rabbit hole of YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
as a lot of photographers have done, of course. It was kind of an addiction, actually. So I would learn a little bit here and there. I'd start with learning a little bit about the exposure triangle, all the
Yep.
basic stuff, composition, all that kind of stuff.
You started out in YouTube and you started developing your skills, I guess, and understanding the camera and the gear a little bit better. What then sort of sparked the interest in landscapes per se?
I'd say that probably goes back further to when I was a teenager. I lived in Ontario until I was about 13.
Yep.
So anyway, my parents decided to move back home, and we drove, well, from Ontario to Newfoundland, which is about 2,000 kilometers, and drove through Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia was absolutely beautiful. I had no idea. But then we got off the boat at Port aux Basques. A little while after, you start seeing all the mountains, and I had no idea, because the last time I was in Newfoundland, I was 9 years old, and
Yep.
I lived in St. John's, and I pretty much hadn't been outside of St. John's, so I didn't really know what Newfoundland was like.
Yeah.
So I always remembered that. Newfoundland was, I had no idea how beautiful it was.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Newfoundland and what people could expect to see if they visited?
Oh, there's plenty, of course. You got everything from up on the Northern Peninsula, Gross Mourne,
Mm-hmm.
and the Long Range Mountains, the Tablelands, which is a crazy place, actually. When you're driving down the road, you can see in the summertime, it's cool. You got green on one side, and it looks like Mars on the other. So they're the complete opposites. And there's only one other place like the Tablelands. It's in the world. I thought it was Australia, but I could be wrong on that. And it's something to do with the Earth's mantle.
Okay.
Had come up somehow thousands of years ago, and not a lot grows there. So that's why it's got kind of that little Mars look.
Yep.
Also, then you got down on the west coast. There's some beautiful mountains like the Wreck House, Cadroy Valley, and then Central, which is where a lot of the icebergs will come down in April, and May and June, and then shortly after that you'll see the whales.
Yep.
And then of course on my side of the island, the East Coast, you got St. John's, which is a beautiful city.
Mm.
It's an old city. They say it's the oldest city in North America. So it's got a lot of history and it's got a lot of interesting architecture and old buildings. Yeah, and then just not too far from me, with it anywhere within a couple of hours, there's plenty of coastline, plenty of sea stacks,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
kinds of landscapes.
Yeah. So you kind of got, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got forest, mountains, sea, icebergs, Arctic tundra. You've got Mars-like structures. Sounds like you've got it pretty much all.
There's a huge variety. It definitely, like, I definitely, it's a photographer's playground for sure, right? Yeah, like, and it's great because, like, well, now of course fall, it's beautiful in certain parts of the island during fall. So like I'm heading down to the west coast now
Yep.
next week, and that's absolutely beautiful. All kinds of fall colors, plenty of coastlines to play with, and then of course, there's places on the island you can do winter photography, but then when the spring hits, the icebergs will come down.
Yep.
Not every year is great, but most years you'll definitely get plenty of big icebergs in certain parts of the island.
Yep.
So they'll start at the northern tip of Newfoundland, right down to central, right down where I am on the east coast,
Yeah.
and they call that Iceberg Alley.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and some years there's thousands of icebergs.
Yeah. Quite a lot of them beach themselves on the coast as well, don't they?
They do, yeah, they do. And this year we had one in Triton. That was a massive iceberg, and that one hung around in that spot for, geez, it had to have been 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So plenty of opportunities to get up close and personal.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, for sure. People taking you out in boats, and it was close enough to shore. You could just, I was using, I was using wide angle sometimes.
Wow.
So it was that close, right? Yeah.
Amazing. What's your favourite spot? Where do you like to shoot, and what keeps calling you back?
There's a couple actually. I'll Chance Cove comes to mind as one of my favorite places. It's a place. It's about an hour from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
There's two fairly big sea stacks, one bigger than the other. There's like plenty of bald eagles, plenty of wildlife. In the spring, you'll get the capelin, just like a little small fish. I don't know if you know what a capelin is. It's almost the
I've
size of
not come across it before, but yeah, go on, describe it.
The whales follow them in, so
Okay.
it's sort of one of their food sources.
Yep.
And they're probably the size of they're probably smaller than a mackerel.
Okay.
All right, and they'll roll up on the beach and flop around, and they're like huge schools. And when you're near the beach, you'll see like the water will turn black.
Wow.
All of a sudden, and
Yep.
the cape when they're there, right? So yeah, so that's bald eagles, capelin along the beach there, and of course the two big sea stacks, and then out in the distance, in July, you'll hear the whales coming up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do. There was an interesting story actually. Last time was this was yes last trip I made to Chance Cove actually,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of my favorite shots actually. So I went up and I was at the second sea stack. It's this really tall sea stack, and I'm up on this trail looking down, and you can see the beach down below, and
Yep.
the capelin were rolling along the beach, and the bald eagles were hovering above. Took my shots that morning. It was beautiful. So on the way back, I was walking along the trail, and I heard a big swoosh coming out of the trees, and I turn, and here's a massive bald eagle coming straight for me.
Wow.
And I had the tripod at the ready, but luckily he swerved about 5 feet away from me.
Wow.
But the adrenaline was going.
I can imagine. I remember actually when I was about 5 or 6, I think, and I was at this. We're at this wildlife park that the parents took me to. We have a wedge-tail eagle, which is kind of the biggest eagle in Australia, and they can have like a 2-meter wingspan on them. And this thing was on a perch, and he basically flew up off the perch. He was actually had a collar on his leg, so he couldn't go too far. But literally, he just about landed on my head as a 5-year-old. Freaked me out.
Oh my God. Yeah, and they can definitely do some damage. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad he swerved.
Yeah. I can imagine.
No, I'll say that's definitely one of the places that I keep going back to. Like the first time I was at that place, I was blown away just by the size of the sea stacks and just from the different types of compositions
Mm.
you can shoot there. I mean, I shoot all. I don't just shoot landscape, of course. I'm
No.
doing some like cultural shots, things like that, as well, and fishing stages. Sometimes the city, but I really like the pure landscapes and the seascapes and sea stacks are definitely my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask how you would describe your style to somebody that hadn't seen any of your work.
I can't pinpoint my style, but I do like. I mean, I do like atmosphere. I do like adding a little bit of magic in there, a little
Hmm.
bit, as well as trying to, keep the scene as authentic as possible.
Sure, sure.
Obviously I do edit. There's no question about that. I do like long exposures,
Yep,
and it depends on what the scene is, of course.
sure.
You know, I mean, but I can't really put my foot like on what my particular style would be.
Yeah.
I would say my because I'm still changing a lot. I don't
You don't stick to any particular genre. And I guess no wonder
no.
living where you do. You've got wildlife, you've got architecture, you've got the landscapes as well. I guess for me, when I see very vibrant colours and really, I guess, crisp but very realistic sort of imagery. And to me, it really gives a sense of the place in which the photo has been taken. For me, it sort of transports me there. I can
Mm.
feel the chill in the air when you've got your autumn colours which are coming on now, and you can sort of feel, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be getting a little bit colder there than where I am now. We're headed in towards summer now.
Oh, for sure. It was like 5 degrees the other day, but felt like one. So it was,
Mm.
and yesterday morning it was there was frost on the grass, so it's definitely quite cold now. Yeah.
Do you have goals in your photography, and do you think it's important to have goals in your photography?
I don't really have goals in a sense that okay, I need to achieve something.
Hmm.
I think I'm more driven with my photography just to, improve. If I see something that, a particular style or a particular technique that I think could be useful for something that I already have in mind, like I might have a particular location
Yep.
that I have in mind, and I may, try to learn a technique to do justice to that particular scene I have in mind.
Yep.
For example, like we have a ship that's at Harbor Grace
Hmm.
that's been sitting there since 1969. It's an old ship just sitting there in the harbor. I always thought that, that would look really cool as a ghost ship.
Yep.
Learning some long exposure techniques and with the right conditions, I think I captured one of my favorite shots.
Mm. Mm.
Very very ghostly looking, ethereal looking scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess living where you do, I'm always interested in the nexus between your place, your subject, and your technique. I'm interested in whether or not photographers have actually thought about which one comes first. Is it where you live drives the types of shots that you take and the subjects that you take, or is it the subjects that you take that drives where you live to a certain degree? Because some people make choices about where they live because of what they like to shoot, or does the technique and what your style of shooting and how you want to shoot drive the other two?
Uh, I would say the subjects definitely do drive the types of techniques that I choose to do for sure.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, like there is quite a bit of a variety here, so I definitely do use a wide range of techniques to to capture some of the scenes. I mean, I use focal lengths all the way from 14 all the way up to 200. I mean, I've
Yeah.
probably some more beyond it, but mostly I go from 200 or below.
Yep. Yep.
But I hear landscape photographers say all the time they use either from they shoot from 14 to 35 or 100 to 200, and they don't shoot anything in between. But here in
Yeah.
Newfoundland, like I would say there's plenty. Most of my shots are from 35 to 70 mil because of
Okay.
some of the scenes that we have here in the fishing communities. It lends itself better to use that focal length.
Yeah. To get
Um,
in a little bit tighter than that sort of
Tighter, a little
broad
less
grand landscape sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, and a little less distortion for certain buildings. Sometimes it's nice the distortion is, but sometimes it's better for it to just look the way you see it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So those focal lengths lend itself well to those subjects.
Yeah. Do you set yourself any projects when you're thinking about your work? I guess it's a way of asking the question around planning versus being more spontaneous. Are you somebody that has a concept before they go into the field and says that's what I want to shoot and that's where I'm going to go and I kind of know where I'm going to stand and I've measured it all out in photo pills and all the rest of it and I know where the sun's going to come up or the moon or whatever? Or are you more, okay, I'm going to turn up, what I get is what I get?
I do some planning. It depends if it's close to where I live. If it's within an hour or two, I'll do plenty of planning. Like it won't
Mhm.
be too extensive, but in the sense of okay, I want certain conditions
Sure.
for a particular scene I have in mind, and I can just kind of wait for those conditions I'm only within an hour or two from that particular location. But if I'm traveling to a place that's I'm going to spend, 4 or 5 hours. The most planning I'll do is just check the forecast
Yeah,
and
right.
see what, forecast suits the locations that are within, say, an hour of where I'm staying. And I'll make a decision based off, what the forecast is for each of those locations. But of course, first thing I'll usually do when I do go into a place that I'm staying, for 3 or 4 days,
Mm,
plenty of scouting
yeah,
ahead of time. And then of course I would make my decisions based off that. But yeah, well so like if I'm and then when I'm on the scene itself, I'll size it up, with my camera, through looking through the viewfinder to see if I can take advantage of the wide angle distortion,
yeah,
when it
right.
comes to say flowers or say, a sea stack or whatever, and
Hmm.
just to see what the lines are going to look like. Or I might zoom in just to see what the frame is going to look like. Just simple stuff like that. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Are you more into the artistic side or the realistic side of photography? Are you trying to portray what you see exactly how you see it, or are you trying to do something more artistic with it? And by that, I mean, aside from editing, I mean, in terms of composition, in terms of color, and in terms of how you actually pull that shot together.
both I would say,
Okay,
and it depends on the shot, of course.
sure.
Right? Some scenes just it lends itself to just take the shot, get all the information you need, just and bracket if you need,
Yep,
and just take the shot. But and then there's other scenes where yeah, I'll definitely play with long exposures to give it that ethereal look, to make the water look very milky or ethereal, around the rocks.
sure.
I'll definitely do some of that, but I would say some of my best shots are just taking the shot. For example, I did a trip there recently down in Buren. Started out the morning was before the sun came up. It was extremely foggy. I had started in this area called Port Bras, and there was an old boat there uh, laid on the side of shore on the side of the shore, and it had some nice reflections, and it was very foggy. I just took a couple of snaps. That's all to a shot. Like to just frame it up and shoot it is not much more to it than that.
Mm.
And then fog would not lift. So I didn't think I was going to get a sunrise. So I went down to another location that's in Buren itself that I had shot the night before. So decided to run down there just to see what it would look like. And the sun was just starting to come up, and the fog lifted a little bit in the distance,
Yep.
but it was these set of houses that are just kind of out on the edge by themselves.
Mm.
So it lit up the fog. The sun did,
Nice.
and it pretty much the fog itself there was had covered everything that was in the distance, the hills. So
Yep.
all you could see was the houses
Nice.
and the yellow lights. There was not much more to than just taking a snap of that. And then there's other times where, of course, I'll use long exposures. I'll use focus stacking,
Mm-hmm.
um, depending on the scene, and exposure blending, depending on the scene, of course.
Yeah, nice, nice. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that catches your eye that says, yep, that's the composition that I want?
I usually have something in mind
Okay.
beforehand. Again, like I was saying before, I'll scout out the areas.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm scouting, I'm looking for definitely shapes, definitely color for sure. If I'm in a fishing community, I'm looking for something a little, that stands out from the town itself.
Yep.
Usually it's a fishing stage, could be a boat, could be reflections, and if I'm in along a coastline, of course, sea stacks are some of my favorites. I
Mm-hmm.
will look see if there's an unusual anything unusual about the coastline itself. See what way the water's hitting the coast. Maybe I could do some interesting long exposures,
Sure,
creeping.
sure. Is this a full-time career or a hobby, or what is it in your life, and how do you balance the rest of your life with the photography side of things?
It's just a side thing right now, and I think that's the way it will be. Um,
Mhm.
I do have a full-time job, so I have two kids and a wife, so I need that security.
Yep, yep,
But it is a nice little, side gig. So I do make money in several different ways,
sure.
from print to licensing to sometimes I'll pick up a contract for an advertising company,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll do a bit of work there. But it keeps me quite busy considering a full-time job and two kids.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, what techniques have you got to try and get that balance right? Obviously, the photography can take a bit of time. Going out scouting, getting the shots, then coming back editing. Are you doing your own prints, or are you using a print service to manage that side of things? What are you doing to, I guess,
I do
streamline
use a print service actually.
things?
I've been using them for a long while. A place here called Newfoundland Canvas,
Okay,
and they do an excellent job. I don't really want to get involved in the printing side of things myself.
sure, sure.
I would just rather somebody else take care of that. I just do the shooting
Yeah,
and the editing.
fair enough. I think the printing side of things is a bit of a black art.
Yeah,
If you know, you know. If you don't, it's a bit arcane, and working out how to operate with all the different inks and papers and what's going to look good with that particular image is a pretty tough choice, I think. And yeah, I'd rather leave it to the specialists. It's not my speciality, certainly. So, are you working closely with the guys at Newfoundland Canvas, or are you you just send them the files and they send you back the finished product, or do you have a real strong dialogue between them?
what they do is they have a site's called Art Funnels, basically, and what that is, you just it's a free website basically.
Okay.
Pretty much any artist, if they want, they can set it up there and upload your files, and you as the artist would promote it,
Yep.
and and they take care of the printing side of things. I mean, I do stay in contact with them from time to time if I have a particular question or issue or anything like that.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, I've been doing work with them for probably 4 or 5 years now, and I've had no issues. And their print quality is excellent. Yeah, had no issues at all.
So, in terms of where you shoot, do you stay fairly local, as in Newfoundland, or do you go further afield? Are you, branching out into Nova Scotia or other parts of Canada, the US, and international travel?
Nova Scotia, I would love to go to, but right now it's just all Newfoundland. I definitely got my certain locations in mind
Mm-hmm.
that I want to hit. Of course, the West Coast is next.
Yep.
Next year's Francois. It's a place that's on the south coast of Newfoundland, and the only way to get in there is by boat.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like the town is in this little
Mm-hmm.
fjord. So you go in there by boat, of course, and there's another fjord, I believe, up on the back somewhere as well. So it's quite isolated, and I think there's only 200 people living there now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward. So next July, I think I'm gonna take a shot down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as of right now, Newfoundland is my playground when it comes to landscape photography, and it probably will be for a long time to come, considering
Yeah.
the young
Why
family
would you go
that
anywhere
I
else
have.
when you got so
Yeah,
much? Yeah.
for sure, right? There's no shortage of anything to shoot here.
Yeah. What's your most memorable experience that you've had while taking photos?
I would say probably recent. That trip to Bjorn was quite memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after that scene I explained to you earlier about the fog,
Yep.
I was going to go down to Chambers Cove,
Okay.
and when I went down, and it was quite foggy along the coast, so I waited there for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
hanging around, checking out the coast, checking out different spots, hoping that the fog would lift, and it never did. So I decided to head. It was probably an hour away to this place called Harbor Mill. There was this sea stack that was pretty well next to the beach, and it
Mm-hmm.
had a couple of trees on top, so it was very
Nice.
interesting.
Yep.
So I went down there in the evening, and I was blown away actually by the mountains in that area. Very, very close, in my opinion, to Gross Mourne in
Mm-hmm.
size. And so I set up that night and took a few shots. The light wasn't the best. So the next morning I got up, took a few shots again. And I thought the light was done. I picked up my tripod, my camera, started to walk back to my truck, and I turned around, and the light just started to, turn red, orange.
That's always the way. As soon as you pack
Yep.
your tripod up, it's on.
So yeah, well, so I ran back down, of course. I took a few shots, and I got something what I thought was pretty good. So then I decided I didn't get a chance to look around the night before, so I decided to have a quick look around to see if I could get something before the light left.
Yep.
And there's a little place called Bay Largent, and
Mm-hmm.
as you're driving along the mountains, there's like this little road that goes across to Bay Largent, and it's across the bay. The road is like in the middle of the bay, going
Yep.
across the Bay Largent. And I looked back, and I saw the mountains. The mist was rolling along the mountains. The sun was just coming up over it, and there was a beautiful reflection. So I took a few shots there. Went inside the community, and there was a boat sitting there with beautiful reflections, a mountain in the background, and then
Nice.
there was a fishing stage there, and the mountains in the background with the mist. It was just I think it was some of the best shots I've taken
Fantastic.
in the span of probably 40 minutes.
Nice.
So
Very.
that's probably definitely one of the most memorable moments
How
of my
about horror
career.
stories? Everyone's got a horror story.
Okay, so besides the bald eagle, I do have another one. My first time in no, second time in Grossmore, actually.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place called Rocky Harbor. There's a lighthouse nearby.
Yep.
So I decided to do a little bit of a astro that night, the lighthouse, and there's this little trail near the lighthouse, and next to the trail there's a set of trees.
Yep.
And I hear and there's a field on the other side of the trees. So I hear swoosh, 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 swoosh coming through the field. So, of course, that got my attention.
Yep.
Next thing you know, I see the trees rattling. And I tried to turn on my flashlight. For whatever reason, I must have had it on a setting where it was blinking, so I couldn't get a real good view to see what it was. And when I did do that, I heard a little bit of a squeal, and of course, I took the tripod out and ran over to the lighthouse. Looked back, I didn't see anything, so I decided to just head back to my car. I looked up the sounds for bears, and
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it was a black bear.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite. If I had hair, it would be hair raising. That's for sure. Yeah.
So
do
you take precautions like carrying bear spray or anything like that around with you? Or?
No, I don't. As far as I know, bear spray is illegal here.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but no, I don't. But if you look up bear attacks in Newfoundland,
yeah,
I don't think there are any. I tried to look it up just to see.
Yeah, okay.
I was just curious one day to see. But the bears here, generally speaking, they're more afraid of people than you are.
Mostly
they're pretty skittish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get the brown bears there, do you? Or
no, just black bears.
Just black bears. Yeah.
Some coyotes.
They tend to be a little bit more afraid of humans than the browns. The browns tend to be more aggressive.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Still, I mean, at night, nothing worse than having a large carnivorous wild animal rooting around in the grass near you.
Oh yeah, well, it took me a little while to get to sleep that night.
Imagine.
The adrenaline was going. Yeah, but luckily I haven't had a run-in like that again. But I am going down to the West Coast, so they're more abundant in that area.
Yeah, right.
My part of the island, it's very rare to see a black bear, so I don't usually have to worry about that on my side. But once you hit Central and then the West Coast, that's where most of the black bears are.
Yeah, sure. What's the practice of photography taught you about the world?
It's definitely it's opened my eyes a little bit in the sense of the way I see light, and it's definitely made me more observant. That's for sure. Like, whereas before I would probably, drive by or walk by a place I probably would not have looked at before. Like now I find that I'm always looking, especially in the evening or in the morning, to see what the light looks like on a particular, object, or on the grass, or how it's hitting the water, just to see how interesting the light is. Whereas before it would have just been a mundane thing for me. So it definitely it's definitely made me more observant.
Yeah, cool. What's your routine in the field? Do you do anything in particular what's the first thing once you've hiked into your location, you've got to your location? Is it tripod up, straight into taking shots, or are you more introspective around it and soaking in the atmosphere before you get into it?
A little bit of soaking in the atmosphere, a little bit, but usually what I'll do is I won't even take out the camera. I'll just look around, see what's interesting. Once I find something that I think is a little bit interesting, I'll pull out the camera. Look at it through the viewfinder. I always prefer looking through the viewfinder because I find I can pick up on, I watch for the edges.
Yep.
Of the frame, just to see how it's going to affect the foreground, or the clouds, or any lines, anything like that. So I definitely I'll do that. And then once I think I have something, that's when the tripod will come out.
Yep.
But sometimes before that, I will use my phone, because I'll put on the wide on my phone just to see, okay, is that going to be interesting? Because instead of just taking out my camera, once I'm satisfied, I'll take out the tripod, put the camera on the tripod, and look through the viewfinder again. I might shift it around slightly. I might lower the tripod a little bit, or raise it, just to get that perfect little composition. And then I'll just try to zoom in, zoom out, and try to exclude anything that I don't want in the frame or include anything. And then from there, I'll do a few test shots of different shutter speeds.
Yep.
Takes for instance, if I'm doing a seascape, I'll start with usually a half a second shutter speed because that's usually my favorite. I usually find water at a half second looks very interesting,
Yep.
and I may increase it or decrease it based off that, and or I may consider doing an extreme long exposure. And from there, I'll probably just play around with it, and I may do some bracketing and exposure blend after if I think I need it. But most of the time, I usually like to shoot to the side of the sun because I usually find the light a little bit more interesting that way.
Yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
it's little less work in post,
Yeah. True.
right? So, but yeah, I will shoot toward the sun if I have to. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Cool. So you've got your shot. You're pretty happy with it. Are you straight home and into the editing suite, or do you leave it lying around on the hard drive for a few hours, days, months, years before you get into it?
It depends on the shot. Some shots I get a little overexcited,
Yep.
so I'll probably get in and just play. Now I probably won't finish the shot right away. I might just do a quick edit just to see where it can go.
Yeah. Got it.
And yeah, so I'll just play around for a little bit, and again, I might not uh, fully edit it.
Mhm.
And usually I find that I'll wait until I'm in the mood to actually sit down and edit.
Yep.
I won't force myself to do it, um, because I love editing, so I want it to be fun. So I
Yeah.
really don't want to force myself to do it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Um, but yeah, but I'll definitely let some images sit. I've had images where I have had on my hard drive for almost 2 years,
Wow.
and then I would finally edit them, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
after, of course, I've edited all my favorites, and but sometimes what happens, your tastes change, or you see something you didn't see before,
Yeah.
or you learned a new editing technique that made it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's pretty much how I do it.
Cool. And are you Lightroom, Photoshop combined, or just one or the other, or and are you stacks of layers, or are you fairly minimal with your edits?
Depends on the shot again. Like that, a good example would be that one in Fjord, for instance. I
Hmm.
mean, I do use Lightroom and Photoshop. I'll usually just do like a little bit of shadow work and a little bit of highlight work just to get it to the exposure roughly that I want,
Yep.
and bring it into Photoshop. And with this shot, that was from Bjord, and I just a little bit of contrast work, not a whole lot. There was no exposure blending, just a
Mm.
simple shot, right? And just make sure I had my shadows and my contrast where I wanted it, and a little bit of saturation work. But other than that, not much. But I will go into exposure blending. I'll use luminosity masks at times. It depends on the shot again.
Yep. Yep.
Um, that's pretty much it. That's
Yeah.
all. I'll go.
Do you
That's
find
pretty much what.
do you find those ones that you don't need to do too much to more satisfying, or do you really like? I mean, you said you liked editing. Do you really like those ones that you actually put that little bit of extra polish on? Take your time over and put a little bit more effort. Which ones do you tend to gravitate towards in terms of the ones that you like more?
Uh, I do like to edit, but I'm still excited about a shot that I don't have to do a whole lot of work, as long as the shot, it's beautiful, and
Mm,
it's
mm,
what I was going for, and I did capture what I wanted in camera. I'm still good with that, but at the same time, I have no qualms at sitting down for a good hour or so to edit an image if need be.
Yeah.
If I'm in the right mood, no problem. I have no problem sitting down and editing for an hour. But yeah, it, either way, it floats. Yeah, I
Oh, that's
definitely.
cool. So you mentioned that a lot of your craft was learnt from YouTube. Did you do anything else other than that, or was it purely self teaching through learning through others' experience?
Most of it was self-teaching in the sense, like, yes, I would learn a few things from YouTube, like if I wanted to learn the exposure triangle or if I wanted to learn long exposures, I would just pick one thing and go out, try that, and then on to the next thing, sort of thing. But that's pretty much the way I did it over the years. I would just learn a little bit here, a little bit there, and something would nag at me where it just doesn't. Why is it? Why does my work? It just there's just something not right about it.
Something
So it could be
missing.
the shadow, yeah, or it looked too contrasty.
Yep.
I think a lot of that is just it's not so much the tools themselves. It's just your eye getting used to where your contrast should be, where your shadows should be,
Yeah.
where your highlights, where your colors should be, and maybe that's not necessarily where it should be. Maybe it's more um, your tastes changing
Yeah.
over time,
Yeah.
where you just prefer that look. So it's hard to say, really. It doesn't necessarily mean you're better, right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Everyone's on their own learning curve, and some are. I won't say towards the end of their learning curve, but they're towards the mastery of their craft as opposed to the beginners. And I think it's an important message for people that are just starting out or have been doing it for a little while, and they're dissatisfied with their own work, maybe because they're comparing it to somebody else. What I tend to advise people is compare it to your work 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and when you have a look at that, you go, okay, now I see how far I've actually progressed, and I know that I'm actually progressing and not, and unless you're still just sort of taking it out and sending the saturation slider to 11,
yeah, 100%. Now that you say it that way, there has been a couple times when I did go back and look at some of my work that I did in the past. So I can honestly say I have improved compared to then.
yeah,
But but over the last couple of years, I don't know if it's improvement or if it's just like what I said before. It's just my
yeah,
taste have
taste
changed
change, yeah. And
a
that's the
little bit,
thing.
right?
Your tastes do change as you get more exposed to it, as you gain experience in it. I think your tastes definitely change. I know.
Yeah,
I'm trying to um, veer towards I guess the less popular images that you see floating
yeah,
around Instagram, where like quite vivid, quite vibrant images. I like vibrant colours and
yeah. Me too,
so
of
forth, and
course.
I like an impactful shot. But I'm also actually I've decided what I want to do is more of those gentler uh, images and the ones that aren't quite as
Mhm.
dramatic necessarily, and
Yeah,
that's a combination of the technique but also the subject matter as well. So looking for those compositions that lend themselves to that sort of gentler feel as opposed to that more dramatic and vibrant feel. I mean, that said, if there's a dramatic storm sky or something like that, I'll get out there and shoot it.
for sure, for sure. I get it. Mhm.
So, are there any particular photographers or tutorials that you particularly followed to learn from? I mean, I've got a few favourites myself, but I'm just interested in the ones that you sort of pulled
We
out.
might have some similar. We might have
Probably,
some similar. Nick Page, of course.
yeah, yeah,
Um, he's a given for sure, and he puts out a lot of great stuff.
yeah.
Ryan Dyer, I definitely like some of his stuff, and who else? Mad Peterson. I
Yeah,
haven't looked at any of his tutorials though, but I mean I do follow. I find him very entertaining. Um, and who else off the top of my head now? Ryan Dyer, Nick Page, Matt Peterson. I think that's pretty much it. That
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I don't spend too much time like watching tutorials. It's only every now and then, like I said before, where
You got something
if
specific.
something's nagging at
Yeah.
me and I'm like, okay, I'd like to improve in this area, then I'll go looking.
Yeah, in terms of editing, for me, I don't think you can go past if you want to get down deep into how Photoshop and or Lightroom
Yeah.
works. F64 Academy
Oh,
stuff.
yes, I've watched some of his stuff before.
Yeah,
Yes.
in
Yeah.
terms of understanding how those sliders, what they're doing to your
Yeah.
image,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a what's his name, Blake Rudis, I think his name is. I don't think there's a better example of how to learn the craft of actually editing your image. In terms of understanding the not just the technical, but the aesthetic qualities of what those sliders are actually going to do to your image. And for me, I just I've learned so much and changed my processing technique around not necessarily following everything that he's doing, but I've built a workflow that kind of lends quite heavily from some of his work.
Actually, there is one guy, and this is when I first started learning editing. Actually, Anthony Morgan. I think it's Anthony Morgan.
Okay.
Anthony Morganti. I think his name is. And basically, he does a lot of. It's all free stuff on YouTube, and he does a lot about Lightroom, and he just
Yep.
goes through all the tools, what they can and can't do. And I do remember actually now that's how I started with Lightroom,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I learned all the ins and outs and all the things you can and can't do. And but yeah, it was a great way to start. It was definitely um, you know, uh, I definitely learned a lot from those
Mm.
tutorials.
Do you prefer photographing alone or with other people?
Um, I would say mostly alone. I do like the company. I mean, I used to go out with a few photographers in the past,
Hmm.
and we definitely had a few laughs and a good time. But I find sometimes can be a little bit distracting.
Yep.
So if I'm going to a new place, I'd prefer to go by myself because it's so I can just focus on what I need to do. But if I'm
Yeah.
going to say like a place like Chance Cove,
Yep.
uh, every now and then I'll go with a friend of mine up in Chance Cove. I have no problem with that because I know the area, I know what to expect,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm probably going to come out with something just a little different, or it's just for a bit of fun. It's not necessarily I'm going there to try and get, an epic shot.
Yep.
But generally speaking, yeah, I do prefer to shoot on my own.
Mm. Mm. Is that a conscious decision that you make, or is it just that's just what you like doing?
Uh, I would say it's a bit of both. I do like shooting and by myself. I like to spend time by myself. So that little escape sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice to just go out and go on a little hike by yourself, catch a
Yeah. I,
sunrise.
I got to agree. I sometimes like that time where I don't have to think of anyone else's needs or whatever, and it's about what you want to do, and it's taking time for yourself to get in the zone and get in there, do what you want, and come out with something that you're happy with.
Yes, for sure, and I get it. But at the same time, I mean, I do enjoy, every now and then getting out with another photographer and having a chat. And of
Mm,
course, I do like to talk photography, so it's you know, it's 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 definitely something I like to do as well.
sure.
But the time by myself, I definitely enjoy that.
Yeah. What do you do if you hit a creative wall?
I don't know if I get that many creative walls because I do go through periods where I'm just too busy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can't do photography. So I think I'm getting that time away
Yeah.
and I'm not just doing photography all the time.
Hmm.
So it's enough that when it comes time to go do some photography, I'm recharged
Yeah.
and I'm excited about going and you know checking out a new location or going on a trip. So yeah, it's definitely something I don't run into very often.
No, that's great. What's your favourite thing about being a photographer?
It's probably never being 100% satisfied
Okay, that's great.
about where you are as a photographer. It's go You're never gonna completely master it, and there's always something to learn. So
Mm.
that's definitely one of my favorite things. The time alone out, on a hike or shooting a sea stack. That's definitely up there.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why I choose landscape photography. I prefer landscapes over people photography for sure. Yeah,
I'm with
100%.
you there.
Yeah.
Landscape doesn't talk back, doesn't demand
No,
get the prints 2 minutes after you've taken the shot.
no, I 100%. I mean, I will if I have to. Like I've just finished a contract job there yesterday actually, where it did involve people. So,
Yep.
but it's not too much where it's portrait photography or wedding
Yep.
photography. So I was just setting up a few scenes where, you know, you're for tourism basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
So it's definitely not as bad.
Yeah. The landscape plays a bigger part of it. The,
Yes, 100%.
the
And
people
they're just there to
that
add to the story.
yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
I gotta say, probably AI is going to be one of the biggest. I think personally, it's going to be one of the biggest challenges. I'm not sure about what we're doing as landscape photographers will, but I think,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you're aware of Dolly. Is it Dolly? I think
Yeah.
is what
Yep.
it's called. Yeah. I think the product photographers are going to get hit pretty hard
Yeah.
because
Totally
that's
agree.
yeah. But from some of the things that we do, well, the art side probably will. I think because it can pretty much create some epic looking scenes, but from a tourism point of view, I'm not sure about that though because I think with that people want to see scenes of places
That actually
that
exists.
actually exist. Exactly. So if you have an AI trying to recreate that, and there's a few elements in there that never existed in the first place, I don't think that's going to go over too well.
No,
No.
that's not as advertised.
No, exactly. Right. So, but I mean, I could be completely wrong. Who knows what way this is going to go? But it definitely does look like it's going to change things in
Absolutely.
the next
Yeah,
5 to 10 years, I'd say.
yeah. What do you see as the future of photography or landscape photography in particular?
Landscape photography.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's not something I really think about, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Um, yeah, no, I just again, like, I have a full-time job and I love photography. And but if tomorrow I had to quit photography, especially for my family, I'd have no problem doing that. So if there is no future for photography in the next 5 to 10 years, I'll be okay with that.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
But as far as where I think it's gonna go, that's tough. I mean, gear is. is getting better for sure. I think it's just going to be easier. It's going to be the barrier for entry is going to continue to get easier and easier for people because either the gear's going to make it easier to shoot scenes that were very difficult to shoot 5 years ago,
Yep.
like exposure blending, for instance. Your like cameras now, you can get that, one shot
Yeah,
really,
that's
so you
right.
don't really need to use that. Focus stacking, I mean, that's pretty well taken care of now. I
Yeah.
think it's the D850, and there are a few other cameras I believe that have it as well. So
Hmm.
you have that in your tool bag right off the bat. You don't even have to learn that if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, that it's definitely going to get easier and easier, and the barrier for entry is gonna get lower and lower, and it'll probably become more competitive as
Mm.
time goes on, especially if you're trying to make a bit of money at it. But if you're just doing it for a bit of fun, I can't, really, what's really going to change is, if you're doing it for fun, you're doing it for the experience, you're doing it
That's
for
right. Yeah.
seeing some of these places that you don't get to see every day. So
And
it's less
I,
about,
I don't think people that are doing it creatively as well, art for art's sake, that's always going to
yeah,
be what they do. And,
yeah,
AI isn't going to force them out, and, unless our robot overlords come and, take all our cameras away.
uh, I read a post on Barrow's Mark Adamus,
Yep.
and I don't know if you saw this post, and that's what he was talking about. He was talking about AI, and he said something along the lines of how it doesn't matter how good AI gets. Basically, is that I took this shot, I
That's right.
experienced it, I edited it. This is my shot. Basically, I
Yeah.
don't know. He didn't say it exactly like that, but
Yeah, that was the essence of it. Yeah.
the essence of it. Yes, right. So in the end, it doesn't matter, uh,
Yeah.
if especially if you're doing it for the experience.
Yeah. What tips would you have for someone that's just starting out in landscape photography?
I guess the way I did it was just start small, start with something specific that you're interested in. I always like long exposure, so I mean that was one of the first things I tried to figure out. So stick to, doing small things, small steps,
Mm.
and don't do editing starting off. Of course, just learn how to do things in camera first, and
Yep.
manual. Definitely learn how to do manual. Uh, that's pretty much all I use is manual.
Yep.
I'm not even sure if I'd know how to use any other mode, to be honest with you. Um, but and then I would say go in, learn a little bit about editing, because editing is another, yourself, is just it's another whole
Yeah, it's a big old beast, and
aspect.
there's a lot to get your arms around, isn't there?
100%, and take your time with that because you can go in a lot of wrong directions. I feel like I'm still doing that at times.
Yep.
Um, you really got to take your time with that, and just, pay attention to what you're doing. Um, and there's so much out there that you can, it's unlimited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
When I'm not out shooting, spending time with my kids,
Nice. Yeah.
that's definitely. I'll definitely try to do some things with them, camping.
Mm.
Sometimes. Besides that, reading. I love to read
Mm.
science fiction.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I find it's just something completely different, and it kind of brings me down and relaxes me.
Yep.
And work, and that's it. Pretty much, that's my life. Work, reading, kids,
Yeah.
photography.
Nice. So, who's your favourite science fiction author?
My favorite science fiction author. Let me see. That's tough. I would say author I'm reading now. I'm reading a book now. It's called Earth Abides.
Okay. Yep.
Andrews is his last name.
Yeah.
Really good. And I like Ian M. Banks.
Mm.
Fantasy. I like fantasy, of course.
Yeah.
J.R. Tolkien. Yeah, some of my favorite.
So, are there any other photographers out there that you think I should be talking to?
Yeah, sure. There's a guy I've been following for years. Frank Delergy, his name.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but I can definitely send you his Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really good, actually. Really good. Been following him for years. There's a guy on the East Coast. His name is Adam Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He works out of Nova Scotia.
Yep.
So a lot of great images there. And one more, probably Jake Graham. He's a
Okay.
guy. Yeah, I don't know. Do you know him?
I've
No.
seen his work. I don't
Yeah,
know him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He does a lot of stuff around Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, he's. I'll send you his information.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
No
Well,
problem.
I got my last question, which if you've listened to any of my podcasts, you know what's coming. Do you like
Yeah,
pineapple on pizza?
obviously, love it. I mean, I don't eat pizza like I used to, but I absolutely love pineapple on pizza. And I remember as a kid, the first time I heard someone say, "Do you want pineapple on pizza?" And I was just like, "What?" I thought it was gross, but when I did try it, I never turned back.
So you reckon those ones that are against it, they just haven't tried
Nope, that's it, right? Yeah.
it.
It's almost like the peanut butter banana sandwiches. You ever have a peanut butter banana sandwich?
I can't say I have. I've had peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, peanut butter and jelly is great, but peanut butter and banana is wicked.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to. I'll trust you on that, and I'll have to give it a go.
Yeah, that was another one I thought was gross. When I tried it, I was like, wow,
Uh,
wicked. Mm.
all right. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, Gord. It's been really fantastic getting to know you. Where can people find your work?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Vero.
All right, no
Just search
worries.
Gord Follett and you'll find me.
I'll make sure there's links in the show notes. Thanks again, mate.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.